The Australian artist John Olsen has died at the age of 95. He was recognised as one of the nation's most celebrated artists, known for his innovative paintings of the Australian landscape. John's son, Tim Olsen, joins us live now. Tim, firstly, condolences to you and your family, of course. We are very sorry for your loss. And look, what a loss it is for all of us, really. Your dad was such a giant in the art world. Tell us your perspective of him. I know it's a big question, but art aside for a moment, what was John Olsen like as a father? What sort of man was he?
Oh, look, there's a wonderful quote from a poem by Homer that said, "When a warrior dies, it leaves an empty tent." And, as a father, he was an amazing man. He just, it wasn't just what he gave to his family, it's what he gave to everybody. His vision of Australia was quite unique. He was a man who certainly taught us how to look at the landscape in a way that no other non-Indigenous artist had ever done before. He took a lot from the First Nation artists and tipped the landscape on its head in a way that he gave us a view of the landscape, as in like First Nation art, where you're looking from underneath, above and from the side in a simultaneous way, so that you encapsulate the feeling of an embodiment of space and the vastness of Australia. A lot of his work was based on landscape, but also he was a wonderful cook. He celebrated cuisine. He celebrated poetry and literature. He really was a true Renaissance man. In fact, he was even New South Wales backstroke swimming champion as a young man and a good rugby player at St Joseph's College. But most of all, he was really Australia's last great landscape poet, in a way. Anyone who at once didn't quite understand his work would say, Tim, I've just flown back from Europe, and as we were flying over Australia, I looked out the window of the aeroplane, and there were John Olsens everywhere. He really understood that to encapsulate the vastness of Australia, it was to get above it. And in that sense, it had a lot of Zen qualities about the use of space as a means of capturing a feeling. And to him, feeling was just as important as seeing. And like anything in life, whether it's relationship or running a restaurant or running any business, it's about getting the feeling right. And his works were as much about feeling as they were seeing. He really wanted to transport you into his vision of how he was just so inspired by the vastness and the ruggedness of the Australian landscape. He understood the poetic side of it and the way that it's a country that's full of great birth and life as well as tragedy in a sense. Australia's a very uncompromising place. And as an artist, he wanted to take on all those kind of themes and turn the landscape into a beautiful object. And so he'll never be forgotten. And his legacy will live for many, many years to come as a person that really taught us how to look at Australia in a different way.
Tim, from what you're saying, it sounds like he's someone who just really appreciated beauty wherever he went. I see that he said once that artists are born, not made, and we were just showing our viewers some photographs of him over the years. It seemed like he really relished being an artist. He seemed to enjoy that quirky stereotype that can go along with that. We know he loved wearing his beret everywhere he went.
Yes.
It seems like he lived and breathed art.
Well, he really is. He really was a landscape poet and the last of the black berets, as one would say. But essentially, he was a unique person. But the thing is that he was a bon vivant and a raconteur, and he got on with everybody from all walks of life, from prime ministers to the local greengrocer. He embodied all the virtues of a man who had or possessed enormous humility and also a sense of being real as a human being. And for that, we can be eternally grateful that John was never a person who felt that he was anything special or above anyone else. His art was always about connection.
And he was publicly recognised over the years for that genius. He won the Wynne Prize for Landscape twice. He won the Archibald Prize. What was he proudest of, though? Did he have a favourite painting or collection?
I think the Opera House mural in particular was something he was very proud of, and it was a huge task for him in the early 70s to produce a work that was 75 feet long by 10 feet high that fills the foyer of the Sydney Opera House. And recently it was announced before his passing that he'd been nominated as the artist to have his work adorned on the greatest canvas or recognisable canvas in the world, that being the Sydney Opera House. And I was able to show him a mock-up with the sound, essentially the animation that's going to be displayed on the side of the Opera House. And in his final journey before he'd lost consciousness, he was able to see that and experience what it was going to be like, even though he knew he wasn't going to be here. And there was just floods of tears as he watched it. So he knew he was loved by all of Australia, and he had many opportunities to exhibit internationally, but no, he cared more about this country, and he wanted to give back to Australia. And he was, despite being highly decorated, he always saw his practice as being something rather like a craftsman. He was not at all pompous about his status. He really said, I'm a painter, I'm a true artist. And that really, getting back to what you first said, that to be an artist is not a choice, it's a calling. He grew up in a house where there was no books and no art, and it's quite remarkable that a little boy from Newcastle became who he is.
Tim Olsen, look, again, sorry for your loss. He clearly led a remarkable life, and we all really do appreciate you taking the time to share your memories of him at this particular time as well, which we understand can't be easy either. Really appreciate you sharing a bit of him with us today.
Thank you for honouring him. Thank you.